Krishna, everybody.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you for coming. There was, I understand, a program at Avalon Gardens, so I know some devotees couldn't make it, but that's all right. We have a small, intimate crowd here, so that's good. Intimate is good.
We don't mind small, right?
We don't like small.
I was looking forward to going to it, but I heard you were giving the class, so I'm like,
Thank you,
I gotta.
So, everyone feeling good? Happy holidays. So I'm very honored to be here, to be able to talk today. And I'm just going to say a few prayers real quickly. On the stage, even on the Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityanamine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gaurani Pracharine Visesa Sunyavari Pasatya Dishatarine Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chaksha Om Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vancha Kalpa Turubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. I'd like to offer my obeisances to all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord who are just like desire trees and can fulfill the desires of everyone, and who are also full of compassion for the fallen and conditioned souls. So I wanted to talk today a little bit about that last prayer, which is compassion. And this is the topic I'm going to be delving into today. So I've had this topic on my mind for some time, and it has to do with communication and how we talk to one another, how we speak to one another, and how we interact as Vaishnavas, as spirit souls, as human beings. And specifically, I want to talk about a topic that is called nonviolent communication. And it's also sometimes called compassionate communication. And I'm making my way through this book. It's called Nonviolent Communication. It's by a man named Marshall B. Rosenberg, PhD. And it's very amazing. I haven't finished going through it yet, but what I've read so far has been very profound and has had me saying to myself, where has this knowledge been my whole life? It was very refreshing to hear. Again, I wish I had heard some of these concepts decades ago. I could have saved me a lot of trouble and heartbreak and misery with my relationships, just all kinds of stuff I could have avoided had I understood some of these concepts. And I'm going to be tying it into Krishna consciousness too. So to sum it up in one sentence, to kind of just get to the sort of the meat and potatoes of it. Oh, meat, that's weird. I don't know, why did I say that?
Yeah.
Soy meat.
The soy and potatoes.
Soy potatoes, I said the same thing.
This is a practice, this nonviolent communication, and it's a practice for communicating in the sattva gun, in mode of goodness, rather than being in the lower modes of passion and ignorance. So the question might come up, well, why be in the mode of goodness? Aren't we devotees? Aren't we supposed to be transcendental to all these modes? And yes, that is true. But we don't necessarily reject things that are in the mode of goodness if we can utilize them in Krishna's service. Our Guru Maharaj, His Grace Jivananda Das Bhattacharya, often speaks about how we can also utilize the modes in our service. For example, the four regulative principles and what they imply, namely austerity, cleanliness, truthfulness, and mercy, are all principles that are in the mode of goodness. And we utilize these principles in order to help us achieve our long-term goal, which is Krishna Prema, of pure love of Godhead. I also just want to say too that this topic has also been shared by other devotees before in our movement. And some notable ones I know are, I believe, Kalakanta Prabhu, who is based out of, is it Alachua? In Florida? Gainesville, I think. Yeah. And also Kastuba Prabhu from Wisdomless Sages has also spoken on this topic. So I also felt compelled to share some of these concepts. And so, and I'll be honest, I'm not a pure devotee, and I really do need all the help I can get. And so I hope some of the discovery, what we'll discover here today, what I've discovered personally, things that have helped me, can also help everybody else too. So I feel impelled to share in that way what I've learned. To quote the book, NVC, which is paraphrasing nonviolent communication, is a way of communicating that leads us to give from the heart. It is a language of compassion. So the question becomes, and this was my question that I was formulating in my mind as I was reading this, is how do we as Vaishnavas, as spiritual seekers, as those in spiritual community and Sangha, how do we communicate with each other when we are sincerely endeavoring for purity, for Shuddha-sattva, pure goodness, for the purpose of uniting with Krishna, while simultaneously, along the way, throughout the course of our lifetime, fumbling with our human selves, which tend to carry the baggage of our karma, our traumas, our ill-begotten communication habits. Many of these things we've gotten from our childhood. So that's hopefully what I'm going to be able to address today through going through this with you guys. So without further ado, and as Gurudev says, what is an ado? Why can't we have more of it? So let's begin. There is a lot to talk about, so I will be condensing this, but I do encourage you all, after today, please do your homework, maybe get a copy of this for yourselves, and go over it. It's very valuable, and hopefully today you'll be able to see that. And also have to give a lot of credit to my wife over here for sharing this with me, because I wouldn't have known about this without her. And she also utilizes this too. And we'll talk more about that as well. So, nonviolent communication. It is comprised of 4 tenets or steps, because it's a process. It's a way of communicating. So the 4 steps: observation, feelings, needs, and requests. Okay? So the first one, observation, also known as what actually happened. So the key thing to take from this is that when we're in a situation, event, a circumstance, and something is happening, something is affecting us, it's creating an emotional charge. What we want to do is we want to observe what is happening without evaluation. So this is connected too with a principle that Krishna speaks of in the Bhagavad Gita called samatvam, which is detached even-mindedness. Another way of saying this observation without evaluation is observation without judgment. Observation without putting value on this. Is it good or bad? And because this is a process with another person or another party, you're going to be sharing. The idea, the objective is that we're sharing, is that we're bringing our hearts closer together. So the first step would be observe without evaluation. So you're going to be sharing your observations. And if you do it with evaluation, people are often, they're apt to hear criticism and resist what we're saying, or they could become defensive, or the things come out. And I also want to quote from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18, verse 23. Krishna says, that action which is regulated and which is performed without attachment, without love or hatred, and without desire for fruitive results is said to be in the mode of goodness. So that action, so observation is also, this is an action that we're taking. So when we observe without attachment, without love or hatred, that is in the mode of goodness. So an example would be, my friend is never on time. Okay? Now, an observation without the evaluation of that same scenario. My friend said she would meet me at dinner for 7 and arrived at 7:45. So the first one had an observation, but there was a good or bad evaluation attached to that at the end. Whereas the other one, clearly, it just stuck to the facts. So, also using words such as always, never, ever, whenever, forever, etc., can lead to problems, because when we formulate a sentence with those words, we're taking that scenario and we're putting it on the absolute. Never, ever, whenever, forever. These are all words that suggest absolute reality, but that's not the case. We want to get away from that, and we want to be more cognizant of the here and now, being in the moment. So observations should be made to time and context, not made absolute, such in the case of using always, never, ever, whenever, forever, etc. It's a lot of evers. So pretend, when you're observing, pretend that you're an objective reporter. You're reporting like on your TV station. You're like a journalist. You just keep strictly to the facts. There's no real injection of emotion at this point. So when we're observing without evaluation, and this is a question to ask yourself in any scenario that comes up, before I speak, can I simply see what is happening without the stories that my mind is adding to it? And these stories, they come from our conditioning by the modes, our trauma. So, any questions so far? Everyone following? Okay, we'll move on. So the next step is feeling, also known as how does this make me feel? So we've observed a situation and it's making us feel a certain way. So we want to describe the feelings that we're experiencing in this given situation using words that express core emotions such as I feel angry, sad, anxious, joyful, lonely, jealous, frustrated, etc. This can be difficult sometimes. I find, especially for myself personally, I did not have very good vocabulary for expressing my feelings. And this can be worked on. There's actually there's a feeling wheel. I'm sure you can find it online. I don't have it with me. But it starts with core emotions, such as these ones that I just mentioned, and then it branches out in all to these subdivisions, I guess you could say, of emotions, categorizing. So one thing here, make sure that you're connecting with a feeling and not making an interpretation. So an interpretation is what you think someone is doing to you. And these words, they're actually mostly verbs that end in ed. I'll read a few of them, just so you can get an idea. So these are interpretations of what we think someone is doing to us. That could be abandoned, abused, attacked, betrayed, boxed in, bullied, cheated, coerced, co-opted, cornered, diminished, distrusted, interrupted, intimidated, let down, manipulated, misunderstood, neglected, overworked, patronized, pressured, provoked, put down, rejected, taken for granted, threatened, unappreciated, unheard, unseen, unsupported, unwanted, used. Whew. So it's very common for people to talk in such a way, to talk in this way of trying to connect with the feeling, but really it's an interpretation, and we all do it. And this is being more in the mind. So thinking and interpreting our aspects of the mind, not the heart. And what you're feeling in the moment may be real, but what we have to ask ourselves is this one of the modes of nature that is speaking, or is this genuinely coming from my soul? So in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 14, verse 5, Krishna says, material nature consists of three modes: goodness, passion, and ignorance. When the eternal living entity comes in contact with nature, O mighty armed Arjuna, he becomes conditioned by these modes. So feelings have a reality, but they are conditioned. This is not our true identity. Our real identity is we're eternally parts and parcels of Krishna. We're pure souls, and we have these three qualities, Sat Chit Ananda. We're full of knowledge, full of bliss, and we are eternal. So that's our true nature. And I think this was one of the things too that stuck out to me, is that for me personally, I understand that intellectually, and yet on a day-to-day basis, perhaps I'm struggling with my human self and with my feelings. And so trying to reconcile these two things, how can I feel these things and yet simultaneously know that I am eternal, a pure soul, full of knowledge and bliss? And that's because these feelings are conditioned feelings. These are things that I've been carrying around my whole life, that we've all been carrying around our whole lives. And practicing NVC, nonviolent communication, brings us to this platform of sattvas, of goodness. So when we elevate the emotions, bringing them out of ignorance, out of passion, on the platform of goodness, we can start to see things more clearly. We can actually bring intelligence to the emotions, or emotional intelligence. And this is very important. It's important in our Krishna consciousness because the idea is we want to become soft-hearted. We want to be able to connect with others intimately, because this is ultimately what we're doing with Krishna through this practice of bhakti yoga. Is we want to soften our heart. We want the heart to become very tender, and Krishna wants that. He wants to have this intimacy with us, but to the degree that we're still hard-hearted or carrying around these resentments or pains or traumas that are lingering, it creates distance and creates difficulty in our lives and our relationships with others and our relationship with Krishna ultimately. And he is purifying us through our practice, through our sadhana. And there are multiple places throughout the Shastra, throughout Gita, Bhagavatam, Nectar of Instruction, about how important it is to control our speech, to control our thoughts, to control our mind, to control our tongue. The tongue wants to vibrate words, it wants to speak, but sometimes that gets us into trouble. And over again, this message is made loud and clear that we need to control that. And we do that by controlling our minds, controlling our feelings, not getting in the modes. Of course, being in the mode of goodness is also in the modes too, but at least from that platform, we can act with more intelligence and do something about it. And from that platform too, we can get to the Sudasattva, the platform of pure goodness. So, anyway, moving on. The next step is needs. Dun dun dun. I think some people have perhaps a allergic reaction to that word, but it's not that bad, I promise. This is also known as having boundaries, or asking yourself, what do I need in this situation? So we've made the observation, we've connected with a particular specific emotion or feeling. Now we need to identify what is the universal need beneath the feeling. Now, if you react positively to this scenario, this situation, often it means a need is being met. If we react negatively, then often the need is not being met. So, you're asking yourself, what do I need in this situation? And, you wouldn't be having strong feelings if all your needs were being met. So there is an unmet need there. And it's good to be as specific as possible. So for example, hypothetical, I felt sad that my sister couldn't come home for the holidays because I need more companionship and connection in my life. Right? Totally valid, totally acceptable. 4 needs that are extremely common. They're called the 4 A's, and I know this because of Open Lotus Meditation, which is my wife's business. She talks about this a lot. 4 needs that are often talked about are attention, appreciation, affection, and acceptance. These are the 4 most common. Some other common needs are like rest, calm, balance, and these are legitimate. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 6, verse 17, he who is regulated in his habits of eating, sleeping, recreation, and work can mitigate all material pains by practicing the yoga system. So, we have to be balanced. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with establishing in your life those things that will help you overall. Our lives are often, there's this analogy that I like. Our lives have 2 tracks, the spiritual and the material. And on that track is a train. That train is your life. If one of those tracks is not there, or one's a little smaller than the other, is imbalanced, then the train tends to get derailed. So And even for people who are, say, renounced, they're still in a material body, they still have material pains. So as long as you're incarnated in this physical body, in this world, there's always some degree of materiality that has to be worked with and navigated with, and then balanced, of course, with the spirituality. So the question we ask when we're trying to identify the need is this a true need, such as rest, safety, understanding, or is this a demand driven by passion? So it takes a lot of introspection, being in the mode of goodness, and also I think too, being in the mode of pure goodness is that the sages, the yogis, they spend a lot of time being very introspective, and this is invaluable. And introspection can mean meditating, could mean writing, reflecting, and really sitting with these things that are coming up, these feelings, these needs. And this is extremely important too to do before you go on to the next step. And so I'll go into that, which is the request. And this is the last step, and this is asking for what you want. So after very carefully identifying what you have observed, what you have felt, and what you need, the final step is to make a request for a specific action or behavior that will help fulfill you. And it's also good to be as specific as possible. This is asking for an action step of some kind. So, very important point here is to make sure that we're making a request and not a demand. So a demand will carry a consequence, such as blaming, punishment, or some kind of guilt trip, if the other party does not do what you want. A request honors the other person's free will to either fulfill this request or not. So we can't be attached to the result, just as Krishna talks about in the second chapter. And it's actually interesting that in the Bhagavad Gita, actually chapter 18, verse 63, that Krishna, he's explained everything to Arjuna. I've given you all this knowledge, I've told you all these different yoga systems, I've told you about the best, I've told you about bhakti yoga, told you to do your duty without attachment, fight in this battle. But you make your own decision. You have free will to choose. So he gave Arjuna that. And it's interesting because Krishna is God. We understand him to be God in Bhagavad Gita. And he could have, he was in his full right and his full power to demand that Arjuna fight in this battle, to fight his cousins, fight Bhishma Dev, Dronacharya, his teachers. But he didn't. He gave him free will. And it's very interesting because when you look at that conversation that they have, you could say that Krishna, in his own way, is using some form of nonviolent communication with Arjuna. You know, and Arjuna he was a real person in a real battle, but he also represents us. He represents humanity. He represents all the spirit souls who are in this relationship with Krishna. And he's overcome with these intense emotions. And remember, Arjuna, I don't know if any of you read Mahabharata, but he is no slouch. He is a very, very powerful individual. And he was extremely devoted. I mean, this is an exalted personality. How many Jiva souls out there get to have this one-on-one experience with Krishna? So this is a very exalted personality. And yet, in that moment when he was standing before the armies in the Kurukshetra battle, he was seeing his cousins, seeing his teachers, his grandfather, and being faced with having to kill them all. He was distraught. He was depressed, dejected. He was overwhelmed. He was overcome with emotion. And this is us. This is us many, many times throughout our lives, is that we become overwhelmed. We become faced sometimes with these insurmountable odds and these situations that seem to feel like they'll tear us apart. But Krishna, he guides Arjuna, and he is compassionate towards him. Not just because he's his friend, but because Arjuna, in that moment of desperation, he was requesting guidance. He was requesting guidance from Krishna. And Krishna, he guides him through, and he uses kind of this process of NVC and gives him this choice at the end. And we could say that Krishna, he's seeing his devotee who is his servant. He needs him to fight in this war. And here he is, he's struggling with material motion. He could have said, this is Maya, this is, so many things. But, and Krishna possibly could have felt that, why is my servant doing this? I need him to help me fulfill my purpose in eliminating these demoniac kings who had incarnated on Earth at this time, which was one of the reasons why Krishna came to Earth 5,000 years ago. But he didn't. He didn't become frustrated, but he gently guided him through this process of knowledge in order to elevate Arjuna's feelings. He was able to bring intelligence and to educate his feelings. And he was able to, through this conversation, through this divine talk, he was able to progressively lift him up to the point where he could get the full perspective on life, on his role, on his duty. And so this is us too. We need to get the full perspective and not get swept away by the currents of the material world. Okay, so at this time, I think I'd like to do a little demonstration. And I'm gonna call on
Hmm.
my wife over here, Padma. So we're gonna do a little demonstration using NBC, and we're going to go with the dishes.
Oh, I could get today when I got home.
Okay.
She doesn't need a demonstration, she.
How about
Yeah.
how about a demonstration of violent communication and
Yeah, yeah.
non-violent communication?
Yes, I am.
That's what we're gonna do.
I'm gonna do both. Okay, thank you. That was great talk and.
Oh, I'm not finished. This is just a demonstration.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
okay. Okay, so, should I stand up? Or should
No,
I
just
stay here?
let me see.
Stay here.
That's fine. Yeah.
Okay, so the scenario, so picture this is Act 1. And you have a husband and wife, Bala, Gopinath, and Padma Devidasi, and, you know, Padma has been working all day, and she gets home and all the dishes are dirty. And Padma really likes the kitchen clean when she gets home so she can cook. Who likes to cook in a dirty kitchen? No one. You see, I feel very strongly about this. And so I get home and the dishes are dirty. And so if I'm using violent communication, I will come in and look at Bala and go, you don't care about me. What's wrong with you? Don't you appreciate who I am? I've been working all day. Why aren't the dishes clean? What's wrong with you? You're making me feel just completely unappreciated and disregarded. How dare you? What is Bala gonna do?
Whatever. Don't you know I was busy? I was
Busy doing
busy
what?
doing all this other stuff that was more important.
Guess you don't want prashadam.
But I do want prashadam.
So this is a very mild way
Very
of,
mild.
of violent communication. But if in reality, when you put in this really compassionate way, I would walk into the kitchen and see that all the dishes are dirty. And the first thing I would do is actually just take out that emotional charge and say, okay, the dishes are dirty. So I would go to Bala and said, honey, all the dishes are dirty. It makes me feel frustrated and mad when I come home and all the dishes are dirty. My need for appreciation is not being met. My request is that, you know, next time I'm gonna text you about 20 minutes before if you could just have the kitchen cleaned. Is that okay?
Yeah, I can do that.
So,
I'm sorry I made you feel that way. I'll do better next time.
thank you. Hare Krishna.
Request heard.
Request heard. But he has an option to not do the requests, you see. But, you know, he wants to have prashadam and be happy. So you see the difference? So,
What if prashadam wasn't on the table?
if the prashadam was made,
What if the prashadam wasn't on the table, then what would his response be?
oh, well, what's the response?
I don't know.
I gotta feed Krishna.
Thank you. So it's very it's not well, it's hard to give generalized advice on how to deal with all the varying situations. And oftentimes these kinds of things are really difficult to navigate interpersonal relationships. And it can be very hard to find an answer. What is the solution? But NBC does offer a way, a path to be able to connect on a heart-to-heart level. And that's really the goal, to connect heart-to-heart and to elevate ourselves to that level of sattvic living. So nonviolent communication, aka compassionate communication, is a practice. So it doesn't really take effect unless we commit to using it as much as possible. So the benefits are profound and far-reaching. This can be applied in all of our relationships, whether it be romantic, our friendships, relationships with coworkers, fellow devotees, non-devotees, in preaching work, conflict resolution, and it goes on. Actually, on that point of conflict resolution, this Prabhu, Marshall V. Rosenberg, he's actually gone to places of intense conflict like the Gaza Strip, where there's been a long-standing aggression between Palestine and Israel, and has been able to get, through facilitating these talks between the opposing sides, was able to have some success getting each party to hear one another and for each party to make their requests. And a lot of it too was really just people just wanted to be heard. They wanted to be understood what they were going through, and this is universal. I've also used it at my workplace with very positive effect. I was kind of amazed. I used it at a meeting, and I also used it one-on-one with someone at work where there was some conflict, and it just made everything flow so much better. We both felt heard, understood, and appreciated through the use of these tools, and it really just diffused. It made this whole thing that could have been very large and awkward and troublesome just be very easy. And that's one of the wonders of practicing this. When people hear where you're genuinely coming from and you step into vulnerability, it opens up their hearts and they become willing to listen and to take action. So there is a degree of vulnerability, but really you're stepping into your strength when you are able to express yourself from the mode of goodness, from the sattva gun. And it makes such a profound effect. I've seen the effects in my life, in our lives, at home, at work, and I continue to practice it. And I'm not an expert. I've really only have been exploring this in the last 6 months. But I felt compelled today to share this because I think we can use it. I think devotees are not necessarily exempt from using this kind of language or working with other people in this way. Just because we have really good sadhana or spiritual practice or japa doesn't necessarily mean that we've unlearned or unwound all of our bad habits that we've picked up throughout our life. So I think it's good. I think it's good to expand our repertoire, is that the right word? Or our tools in our tool bag to be able to assist us on our spiritual journey. And there's, like I said, there's so many other verses, different topics that we could branch off from this. There's compassionate preaching. I'm not as familiar with Chaitanya Charitamrita, but I know there's examples when Chaitanya Lila and with Lord Nityananda and they're preaching, and again, the topics of controlling the tongue, controlling the mind, controlling the senses, the emotions, these feelings which are very overwhelming to us sometimes. And we have to try and understand one another, to come closer, to share our hearts, reveal our minds. These are some of the loving exchanges of devotees. And we're personal. We're a personal movement. ISKCON's a society based on relationships, based on relationship with Krishna, with the Vaishnavas, devotees. and everyone else too, all living entities. So we're trying to come closer and have compassion for the fallen conditioned cells. Having, I know you all are a room full of Paramahamsas, but I'm definitely a fallen conditioned soul, and I'm trying to have compassion for myself when I feel these ways. And yeah, so I thank you all for your kind attention. So I think we have a little time for some Q&A. If anyone's interested, please.
Thank you so much for bringing nonviolent communication back into my consciousness. I lived in Silver City for a few years ago, and I inherited the wealth of the opportunity of living with roommates who were going through this training of nonviolent communication. And I picked up immediately there was someone in the household that I didn't feel safe with. And it felt like when this person was around, they were doing something to, create unnecessary tension. And I noticed this one roommate would also go through the same experience. And how this roommate delivered, reconstituted the situation. She didn't use accusatory language, like, you're doing this to me. She used the language of, I feel like when X happens, this is why Y is the result. And I really loved how, instead of pointing fingers, there was the open room to discuss about the potentiality of misunderstanding. No. And so, starting today, I guess the point, it's not really a question. I'm gonna order the book, because it's come back into my life, and I think this is so necessary. And I feel like we can really remove 90% of obstacles, unnecessary obstacles, by following this. So thank you so much for your class.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you for sharing.
I have a question. If I order the book for you, is that giving you a hint?
Pama.
Very good talk. Bala bear. I've fit it in. So one of the beautiful things, and I just want to kind of emphasize a little bit on the point of how amazing this process is, because, I see clients every single day. I see couples, I see, women, men who are just struggling in their lives and relationship building and trying to be seen and heard. And I always go to this MBC because it's such a beautiful way to express compassionately what you need in any type of relationship. And I've been practicing MBC for years. And it's really paid off, I think, now as a devotee more than ever, just because I'm able to understand a little bit better. I am always not always, but I am in the mode of passion a lot, in case you guys didn't know. And so I would be burning down villages if I didn't actually use MBC most of the time. Because I just, and it's a lot of reflection. It is a lot of like taking a deep breath and being like, okay, take the emotional charge out. This isn't about you. This is about something else, so it really does keep you, if you're consistently having it in your life and you actually practice it, it becomes like second nature. Like, it was really hard for me to do a violent scene because, and it was a true story. Today I got home from work and I was rushing because we had to come here and the groceries weren't put away, and I was like, honey, next time you come home, please put the groceries away. And that's all I said. But I could have burned down the village at that moment. So
How did that go?
It worked.
it worked. He was just
Sounds
like,
like- okay.
yeah. But it takes some getting used to and a lot of practice to be able to do that, because a few years ago I would have probably ripped the groceries, threw it at him, anything that was violently done I would have done, but not. Don't blink. Blink if you're safe.
You want your dinner? Here's your stinking dinner. Anybody else? Comments, criticisms, requests?
Like in India and Nepal, people say when someone is really mad, they do not remember about Vedas.
Mm.
They don't remember about all the knowledge. So
Forget Krishna.
sometimes it is when situation happens, people forget about all this, and we say, but it is a practice, and it can be practiced.
Yeah.
Thank you, Prabhu.
This is probably in the book, so I could just read the book, but, you know, the example of you observe, then you process your emotions, and then you identify your need, and then compare it to your demand, and then you make a request. But then when you make the request, like in your first example, you said how you're feeling, and then in another example, you don't have to say how you're feeling. And I could see the benefits of both, but like, if you're identifying that feeling to the other person, would that trigger them? Could you leave that step out and just say, I'm observing, this is what's happened, and then here's my request? What does the book say on that?
Mm.
Or Sean can tell me after he orders it and reads it again.
I think I'm gonna phone a friend.
So in the book, it wants you to use the 4-step process. It wants you to go through the observation, the feeling, the need, and the request. But I was short on time, so I just went straight for the request. And later on, we do like intimacy level talks on Sundays. And so I will then probably at that point, in a safer space where I'm not rushing, tell him a little bit more about the situation. But, and I think also it depends, like we practice it like all the time. So I knew that it was okay to do that, but Dr. Reisenberg says that you have to follow that 4-step process every single time.
And how do you make the request or internally in your mind though? You know what I mean? Like, do you go through it internally?
Yeah, you go through it in your mind.
Or say it?
Both. Yeah, but like I went through it in my mind quite quickly. I was like, this is pissing me off. My niece would be, honey, can you, like I did it in my head, but yeah, you definitely want to verbalize it, but not that way, like not in an emotional charged state. Take a deep breath and allow yourself some time to kind of like, but I didn't have that time because I literally had like 10 minutes. I went to dress like this to work and everything just so I could be on time. So, yeah. Did that answer your question?
Thank you.
Yeah, always use the 4 steps is the best way. Yeah, because you're gonna want the recipient to understand and hear you. Because that's the main point is you want to be heard in your state of need. And if you can't express that completely, then it could feel almost cheated.
And that's a good point. That's something we didn't talk about because there's so much, it's so nuanced. There's so much to talk about is how to actually receive. And it's very important to be attentive, to be a good listener, be very open. So, yeah.
And sometimes like Bala will tell me, like he'll have a request and then I'll have to ask him like, what need is needed met, or because he'll put a request and I'm like, okay, what exactly, why? But it's always a conversation. I don't feel attacked because it's hard to feel attacked if someone says, "Can I request something?" You're just like, "Oh, okay." It's hard to get mad at that way of communicating versus just demanding. So.
Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you.
Bala Gopinath Prabhu ki jai.
John, you want to sing? You sing. We're going to do arti and then we're going to have dinner, so I hope you all will stay.